To show you how to change a lid gasket. The first thing we will do is show you the different parts you will find in a lid, and we will show you these parts in the order you will be using them when you change the gasket. Now the first parts are the two mounting screws, followed by the upper spacer, which has 3 holes. Followed by the outer lid, which of course has the dome shape. The fiberglass insulation. Then you have the middle spacer, which contains 2 holes. Then you have the inner lid. And of course you have the gasket. Then you have the lower spacer, which contains 2 threaded holes. And finally you have the outer knob. Now we'll show you the different tools you're going to need in order to change that gasket. The first tool being an Allen key. Then you'll need 2 flathead screwdrivers, 2 clamps, some silicone sealant, and finally you can use a bolt having a thread of 3/8 of an inch. In this portion of the video, we will now show you how to change the gasket. The first thing you will use is the upper spacer, and you will use the bolt that has a threading of 3/8 of an inch. Insert that in the center hole. Now that bolt will not actually stay at the end. It's only used to hold the upper spacer in the vise. Then you will take your 2 mounting screws, insert those on either side. Now ideally, just to hold that in place, you will use a vise. Now you will use the silicone sealant and apply that to the flat portion, the surface of the upper spacer. You will smooth that out. The next step involves taking the outer lid, which is the one that is dome shaped, and you will insert that outer lid over the screws. Then you take your middle spacer, that's the one that has 2 holes in it, and you will put that on top of the outer lid with the mounting screws passing through it, of course. Then you'll use the fiberglass insulation, put that in place. Then you'll use the inner lid, so you can squeeze the fiberglass insulation between the outer and inner lid. This is when you'll use the clamps to hold both the outer and inner lids together. Now at this point you can simply remove the whole thing from the vise. Now this is something we suggest when you actually clamp the lid in the vise, that you use some kind of a towel or something that will prevent scratching. It's not necessary, of course, but it just makes for a neater job. Then with your Allen key, you will simply screw in the two mounting screws that we had inserted initially at the beginning of this portion of the video. You will once again need the silicone sealant. You will apply that sealant to the lower spacer. You will put that in place. And of course you put the lower spacer, you apply that to the inner lid. So it will be at the bottom of the lid. So you'll pass. Now notice of course that right now he is screwing those two mounting screws and screwing those in the lower spacer, because of course the two holes in the lower spacer are actually threaded. So as you can see, we've removed the clamps because now the lower spacer and the upper spacer will hold the lid together. It's also important to mention that it is not only not necessary but not advisable to completely tighten the mounting screws. You want to leave that a little bit loose before you insert the gasket. Another thing you're seeing now is basically you should use an X-Acto knife to cut off the excess fiberglass insulation so the gasket will go in much more easily. Then begins the insertion of the gasket. So initially you go all around, and I think it's important to mention that it will require a bit of patience to insert that gasket completely. So you just push that in with your thumb all the way around. Now once it's pretty much in place, what you have to do is, ideally you can use the flathead screwdriver, and simply, as you see here, insert it fully in that groove. And you do that all the way around. Now, as I mentioned earlier, you can see that requires a bit of patience. Now, in certain cases, especially when you reach the end, it may be necessary, just to make things a little bit easier, to insert the other flathead screwdriver between the inner and outer lid, just to give you some room. Insert the last few inches of that gasket. And of course, finally you pull that out and you finish that last inch. Then once that is done, you simply tilt your lid around and finish tightening those two mounting screws. So both the outer and inner lid will hold tightly in place. And of course you can remove that bolt, which was there initially only to hold the lid in place. And in place of that bolt, you simply screw in your outer knob. And finally what you end up with is a lid with a brand new gasket.